Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna. Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravagajara Sattara Shri Srimad Divine Grace Hasi Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Prabhupada Ki Svantrad Srimad Bhagavatam Class Ki Nitai Gaura Premanande. Glories to assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Glories to Sri Sri Guru Sri Gauranga. My glasses.
I'll give you some water. You need?
Yeah, I may need.
You find the cup for me?
It's okay, actually. Actually, it's okay.
You don't need? Okay.
No. I have actually been drinking this morning. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26, Text 23. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Mahatatvad Vikarvadat Bhagavad Virya Sambhavat Kriya Bhaktir Hahankaras Trividhi Vidhasam Trividhasamapadyata Vaikarikas Taijasyascha Tamasascha Yato Bhavaha Manasasche Triyanam Cha Bhutanam Mahatam Api. The false ego springs up from the Mahatattva, which evolves from the Lord's own energy. The material ego is endowed predominantly with active power of three kinds: goodness, passion, and ignorance. It is from these three types of material ego that the mind, the senses of perception, the organs of action, and the gross elements evolve. Srila Prabhupada's purport. In the beginning, from clear consciousness, or the pure state of Krishna consciousness, the first contamination sprang up. This is called false ego, or identification of the body as the self. The living entity exists in the living entity exists in the natural state of Krishna consciousness, but he has marginal dependence, and this allows him to forget Krishna. Ordinarily, pure Krishna consciousness exists, but because of misuse of marginal dependence, there is a chance of forgetting Krishna. This is exhibited in actual life. There are many instances in which someone acting in Krishna consciousness suddenly changes. In the Upanishad it is stated, therefore, that the path of spiritual realization is just like the sharp edge of a razor. The example is very appropriate. One shaves his cheeks with a sharp razor very nicely, but as soon as his attention is diverted from the activity, he immediately cuts his cheek because he mishandles the razor. Not only must one come to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness, but one must also be very careful. Any inattentiveness or carelessness may cause fall down. This fall down is due to false ego. From the status of pure consciousness, the false ego is born because of misuse of independence. We cannot argue about why false ego arises from pure consciousness. Actually, there is always the chance that this will happen, and therefore one has to be very careful. False ego is the basic principle for all material activities which are executed in the modes of material nature. As soon as one deviates from pure Krishna consciousness, he increases his entanglement in material reactions. The entanglement of materialism is the material mind, and from the material mind, the senses and material organs become manifested. I'm going to read a couple more verses because they're same subject. This is 25. The threefold ankara, the source of the gross elements, the senses and the mind, is identical with them because it is their cause. It is known by the name of Sankrishan, who is directly the Lord, Ananta with 1,000 heads. Text 26. This false ego is characterized as the doer, as an instrument, and as an effect. It is further characterized as serene, active, or dull, according to how it is influenced by the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Ahankara, or false ego, is transformed into the demigods and controlling directors of material affairs. As an instrument, the false ego is represented as different senses and sense organs, and as the results of the combination of the demigods and the senses, material objects are produced. In the material world we are producing so many things, and this is called advancement of civilization. But factually, the advancement of civilization is a manifestation of false ego. By false ego, all material things are produced as objects of enjoyment. One has to cease increasing artificial necessities in the form of material objects. One great acharya, Narottam Das Thakur, has lamented that when one deviates from pure Krishna consciousness of Vasudeva, when one deviates from pure consciousness of Vasudeva or Krishna consciousness, he becomes entangled in material activities. The exact words he uses are Sat Sangha Chadi Kaino Asti Asati Vilasa Te Karuni Lagila Le Karma Bandha Pansa. I have given up the pure status of consciousness because I wanted to enjoy in the temporary material manifestation. Therefore, I have been entangled in the network of actions and reactions. Om Agyatamanandasya Dinanjana Salakaya Chaksuramritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swabhadantikam Vanchakalpatubhyascha Kripasindhavaivacha Patitananam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda nescience, then the purpose for people coming here to enjoy will not be able to fructify. Because we are pure, as by nature, pure Krishna conscious entities. So we may ask, well, why suddenly pure and then not pure? Well, this is Lord Brahma's doing. He's created nescience so that we can be forgetful of Krishna and therefore act independently to fulfill all our material desires. And here it is stated that the false ego is one of the first manifestations of nescience. We have two egos. One is the real ego, which is now overshadowed by the false ego. And therefore, our real state of Krishna consciousness has been covered over. pure Krishna consciousness is the natural characteristic of the ego, the real ego. When it's covered, it's then characterized as the false ego. The ego which is shadowing over the real ego. And it's, in one sense, it's a shame that such a small thing as the false ego can come in the way between us and Krishna. But this is the reality. And if we were to give an interpretation or an explanation of what is false ego, Prabhupada gives this interpretation that false ego means I am the greatest, there is no one greater than me, and I don't need any help from anyone else. So it's a false display of showiness. And as we were just reading in one of the purports, that practically speaking, everything that's going on within the material world is the product of false ego, because they're not including Krishna. Krishna is not included. And I'm just thinking about one of the latest adventures, so-called adventures that everyone's talking about, which is to pay an incredible amount of money to go off into space for half an hour. I don't know, half an hour, at the most an hour. An incredible amount of money. Just so that they can rotate the planet Earth several times and feel that, yes, I'm on top of the world. This is the epitome of false ego. It's a waste of energy, a waste of time, and it inflates further the false ego. So it has no value. It's a waste of time, waste of money, and a waste of one's opportunity to see things in reality. So when that's going on throughout the whole world, throughout our whole life, that be independent. Be a free spirit living entity, free spirit. Free spirit means I do what I want, when I want, and how I like to do it. Free spirit. So then, coming to Krishna consciousness, it's a little bit like a kick in the face, because we're so used to this free spirit mentality that suddenly when we're told you must do this and you must do that, you must do it like this and you must do it like that, and you must do it on time, we're serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's a kick in the face, it's a slap in the face. And that slap in the face is it's painful because it's going against the grain of what we're used to experiencing. I remember when I came to Krishna Consciousness, well, there was two incidences. In fact, one was when I first met Prabhupada. First I came late for his class. I was told it started at 7:30. And one devotee was preaching to me. And suddenly he bowed down at my feet, and I was thinking, well, this guy really understands me. But he wasn't actually bowing to me, he was bowing to Prabhupada. He was walking along the corridor up on the first floor. So he said to me, yes, this is my Guru Maharaj, and if you want, you can come to his class tonight. Starts at 7:30. So I decided to come, but because of hippie mentality, no conception of time, I arrived at 8 o'clock. So Prabhupada was already giving class. So when I entered the temple room, Prabhupada was on the left side and the deities were on the right, and I decided, okay, let me go right where the deities are. So as far away from Prabhupada as possible. And as soon as I sat down, I started committing offenses. What are all these young people listening to this old man for? The older generation had done nothing for the world. So many world wars. People were suffering so much. Materialism was rampant, or started to be rampant in society. So as hippies, we wanted to start a new revolution. And we didn't need any help from the older people. We were going to do it ourselves. So therefore, when I saw Prabhupada, of course I knew he was from India, and we were also attracted to India. But still, I had this idea that the young people were being misled by an elderly man. And half of me said, well, he may be different. He may be different. Well, that's, false ego. You don't know, but you immediately make assumption. And then suddenly devotees started looking back in my direction, and I was thinking, oh, what are you looking at me for? And then I understood the problem was that I hadn't changed my socks in 8 or 9 days. And my feet were actually smelling quite bad in the temple room. And the head Bajari came up and lit a whole bunch of incense just to counteract the smell. So, here's me looking at a pure devotee and thinking I know better than him. But I couldn't even wash my feet. I couldn't, do the very basic thing in life. To be clean. Cleanliness is next to godliness. But this is where we're coming from, and one moment's association with a pure devotee, then our life completely transforms. So, Krishna Consciousness it's more powerful than the false ego. And within a moment's association with a pure devotee, your life can be transformed. And it did, because from that day on, I had clean socks, because one devotee came up to me, and after Prabhupada's class, Prabhupada left the temple room, and the devotee came and asked if I wanted to come back again. And if I did, then could you please change your socks before you come? That was my first instruction. In one sense given by Prabhupada, because everything we say is coming from Prabhupada. So that's that was the beginning for me of my false ego being deflated. The second major incident was when I became a devotee, and I was probably about 3 months in the movement. And one day I was listening to Temple President giving the class. And again my false ego started to react in a very negative way. And I was thinking, well, no big deal, I'm sure I could do this. I could give a class. Something like that I was thinking. And then the next morning the same temple president made an announcement that Bhakta David was going to give the Bhagavad-gita class that evening. And I was quite shocked. I thought, did he read my mind? You know, it was just an unusual thing to happen. That suddenly, a Bhakta is going to give the class. So I went up to him, I said, well, I'm sure there's someone more senior than me to give the class tonight. And he said, no, it's okay. You're giving the class. It will be a good experience for you. And there was no way I was going to come out of that. In those days, it's not like today you can pick and choose what you want to do. In those days, you did what the temple president said, and that was it. Period. You were there for training. And part of the training in Krishna Consciousness is to obey your authorities. So this was the first thing we were told when we came to the temple. So, knowing that there was no way back, I asked him, well, what shall I say? And he said, well, just say what you've heard. Then that's safe. Whatever you've heard, just repeat. Anyway, that night in those days we didn't chant Jaya Radha Madhava because we didn't know the song. We chanted the Hare Krishna mantra. So I exhausted the Hare Krishna mantra as far as I could, just to use up some time. And then when it came to the class, I struggled for the Sanskrit, I struggled for the English, because I'd taken so many drugs. I was illiterate. When it came to giving the class, I said, well, actually, we're not this body, we're spirit souls. Does anyone have any questions? And there was no questions. And my face went red, and you could literally see the false ego coming from this head of mine out into the ether. I was so embarrassed. Temple full of devotees. That's all I could say. Of course, what I said was absolute truth. But that's all I could say. Because Krishna wanted to slap me. Okay, you rascal. You think you're so great? So I vowed there and then I would never look at one of my seniors and think that I was better than them. A major lesson for me. So this is Krishna Consciousness. Welcome. Free admission. Come to Krishna Consciousness and get your slaps given by Krishna. And that's the only way. We don't have any other choice. We don't have any other choice because the false ego is so subtle, such a subtle aspect of our connected to us, that unless Guru and Krishna works on us, remolds us. There's a story in my book of the teacup. What happened to the teacup? You read that story? What's the story?
It gets shaped by the potter. It can also be a violent experience, as far as I can understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, originally it's well, let me just tell this story in a different way. One time I was in Minsk giving a Srimad Bhagavatam class, and I was telling this story. How the clay had been lying around for thousands of years in the mountains. And then one day someone came with a digger and dug me out of the mountain. Well, yeah. The teacup started to explain to one man who was in the museum where the teacup was. And he was very impressed by the cup. And then suddenly the cup started speaking to him. You don't know my history, I will tell you. So when I was there for thousands of years in the mountains, then one day someone came and dug me up and took me to a warehouse. And then from the warehouse I stayed more years until someone came and purchased me, took me to his home. He had a workshop. He placed me on the shelf for another year, and then he came one morning and started punching me around. Punch, knead, smash. Punch, knead, smash. One part of making some cup is you got to get first all the air out of the clay. So he was squeezing, punching, kneading, and I was saying, "Stop, stop! It hurts me." But my master said, "No, I have not finished with you yet." And he continued for another half an hour. Squeeze, punch, knead, slap. And I was crying so much, painful, it was so painful. But every time I said, "Stop, stop," my master said, "No, I have not finished with you yet." When he did finish, right afterwards, he put me on the spinning wheel. And it was going so fast, I was getting dizzy. I said, "Stop, stop, stop." He said, "No, no, I have not finished yet." And then he started squeezing me into this new form. That was also painful. After that, he placed me on the shelf for 1 hour. I took a good rest. I was in a precarious situation. A transformation had taken place in my form. But it was a shock for me. I needed that half an hour rest, and he came back and then he put me in an oven. It was really hot. And although he could not hear me, I was again, stop. Please stop. And then I read his lips, no, I have not finished with you yet. From the oven he took me out and then started painting me with all this chemical paint. What a horrible smell. I nearly fainted. And again he put me into an oven. This one was even hotter. By that time I was just, my hands were in the air saying, well, either I live or I die. I can do nothing. In the very last second I survived that oven. Otherwise I would have died. And then he put me on the shelf, took a mirror, he placed the mirror in front of me and said, now you're ready to serve. So what that teacup had to go through just to be ready to serve, we go through the same inconvenience as that teacup, can be even worse. We complain, no, this is not right. This is all our false ego. Everything in Krishna consciousness is, if it's done, is executed in the mood of the spiritual master or the acharya, Prabhupada. Whatever legacy he's left, we follow it. Anything outside of that, we will have to suffer the reactions. But even inside, within that framework that Prabhupada has given, we still suffer. We're meant to. We've got to transform. Taking such a big transformation from false ego to the real ego. Major transformation. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. But it's all winning in one sense, because we're learning. There's a Buddhist saying, if you have not suffered, you have not lived. So all these obstacles that are on the path of bhakti are actually meant to make us stronger, more wiser, and to deflate the false ego. It is all good, all good. Therefore we have nothing really to complain. Although we do. This is not fair, this is that. But it is all meant for our purification. We come to the Brahma Bhuta platform, then whatever. Heat, cold, honor, dishonor, fame, infamy, victory, defeat, it's all the same. I don't want any part of it. It all belongs to Krishna. That's a good stage, Brahma Bhuta. very good platform. And that platform we can then start loving Krishna, reciprocating with Krishna in a sweet way. But to come to Brahma-bhuta, that's the difficult, the stage of crossing the desert of Anartha Nivritti. So we swallow our pride and prestige for the service of Krishna. Prabhupada writes, together we can achieve great things. Sri Krishna is the supreme controller of everything. If we engage in manifesting a good, well-regimented education system in full consciousness of Him, with firm faith in the guidance of our betters, then there can be no failure. We must cultivate a mood of service and not attempt to enjoy our own prestige. I ask out of those who swallowed their pride and succeed magnanimously, and one who acts independently yet achieves little, who is the better man? When baking a cake, one follows a recipe. If one speculates and decides, I will leave out the yeast today, after all, I don't think it is really necessary. Will the cake rise? No. So though it is not easy and I have much to unlearn, this is unlearn. We learn by unlearning. Whatever we've been told, we unlearn it. So we unlearn it. Some of the things we've learned maybe can be used, but those we don't need, we have to try to forget. And we can also pray, ask Krishna and Guru for help. And we can rise above this mundane conditioning and learn to serve well. Therefore I request you all to swallow your pride and do the same. Krishna also says, those who are not faithful in this devotional service cannot attain me. Therefore they return to birth and death in this material world. Another verse, the Supreme Lord said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you the most secret of wisdom, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. Any questions?
You talked about ahankara. Dhruva Maharaj, he was like driven by ahankara.
Huh?
Dhruva Maharaj,
Hmm.
so he's like ahankara, and but that ultimately led him to success.
Hmm.
So this ahankara good if it's reach, if it's done fully for Krishna. See?
Well, what was his prayer?
Yeah, I was looking for pieces of glass upon those belly.
Yeah, so that means that in his consciousness before becoming Krishna conscious, it was under the influence of false ego. But we have another ego, which is the true ego. So his false ego disintegrated and the true ego manifested. So you don't need the false ego. It dissolves. Anything we don't need, Krishna will take it away. Sometimes devotees argue. In the material world, there's this conditioning that only one person is right. The other person's wrong. The world's full of it. This person's right, this person's wrong. Therefore they stick us in one little box. This is right. Everything outside this box is all wrong. And they've stitched up the world in such a fashion that you must stay in that box. We'll tell you what to eat, drink, what to wear. We'll tell you everything. But don't come out of the box. It's a box-like existence. So Madhavisa was saying, talking with Yamuna, there's only one difference between Krishna and Balaram, and that's the color. Yamuna was saying, no, there are other differences too. They were arguing back and forth. And then Tamal Krishna said, well, let's take it to Prabhupada and see what he says. So he brought them up. He was the servant. He brought them up to Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada, there's a little discussion going on between Madhavisa and Yamuna. Madhavisa is saying there's only one difference between Krishna and Balaram, and that is the color. Prabhupada said he's right. But Prabhupada, Yamuna is saying that there's other differences, just like it's only Krishna that meets Radha. Prabhupada said she's right. Tamal said, well, they both can't be right, Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, and you're right too. So in Krishna consciousness, of course, within the realm of knowledge, there is a right and wrong. But in the realm of service, Krishna accepts everyone's service. There are different camps even in the spiritual world. Rivalry camps. So we got to learn to accept each other and in each other's service. That it's not that one person in the temple knows everything and no one knows anything. So therefore there's this mood of cooperation. A story of the bundle of sticks when we're all together and we work cooperatively for the one cause, which is to please Krishna and get his merciful glance. And so much can be achieved. But if we exercise false conceptions of ourselves, thinking we're better, and I know everything and I don't need any help, this is when danger starts. Hard school, but we got to learn it. Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll stop there. Srimad Bhagavatam class ki,
Jai.
Srimad Prabhupada ki, Thai Gaura Premanande.
Jai.